Rape Shield Law 2 exceptions. Even though the Rape Shield Law in Rule 412 broadly protects victims from having their other sexual behavior or sexual predisposition brought into evidence in a case involving alleged sexual misconduct, some exceptions are warranted. Some situations where the probative value of that other sexual behavior or predisposition evidence significantly outweighs the possible harm to the victim. First, let's talk about the exceptions in criminal cases, then briefly about the exceptions in civil cases. First, criminal cases. The exceptions are contained in Rule 412b1, and there are 3 exceptions. First, situations where the defendant is saying the physical evidence came from someone else, even though the prosecution is asserting otherwise. The second exception relates to the sexual history of the defendant and the alleged victim. That is, if they were in a pre-existing relationship before the alleged act of sexual misconduct occurred, then the defendant in a criminal case is typically entitled to offer evidence of their past sexual history, basically to support the argument, perhaps, of consent. The prosecution also is allowed to introduce this evidence, perhaps to show a pattern of abuse. And the third exception is a constitutional catch-all, evidence the exclusion of which would violate the constitutional rights of the defendant, such as the right of a criminal defendant to confront his accusers under the Confrontation Clause. Now let's talk a bit about exceptions to civil cases under Rule 412b2. Evidence offered to prove the sexual behavior or predisposition of any alleged victim is admissible if the probative value outweighs the danger to the victim and unfair prejudice to any party. It's a balancing test. The next part of Rule 412b2 provides a complete bar against evidence of the victim's reputation for engaging in sexual behavior unless the victim herself in a civil action puts it in controversy. If the victim, him or herself, introduces it at trial, then it becomes fair game for the other side to introduce evidence as well.